One time, it was great. This one girl jumped out of her desk and started running up the aisle to go out the classroom. She was going to run to the bathroom, I guess. But anyway, the nun stopped right in front of the aisle that this girl was running up. And she says, "Where do you think you're going?" And the girl went, "Whoa," and threw up on the nun. And we thought that was the greatest thing that could have happened, that the nun stood there. "Where do you think you're going?" Blah. Like we had like I said, we had ragamuffin parades. And so on Thanksgiving, we'd all get dressed up in Halloween type costumes. And we'd all march in this parade down Main Street or something. I think we got candy or something at the end of this whole thing. And then we'd go home and we watched the Macy Gay parade.
Oh, so it's early
Yeah, it
in
was
the
early in
morning.
the morning, the parade. So, I remember sitting there after the ragamuffin parade. I took my shoes off and I'm sitting up, my feet up on the chair, with my hands around my knees, but my butt and my feet were on the chair. And my brother Rusty goes, "You want some apple juice?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, come and get you." I said, "Can't you bring it over here? Because I ain't bringing it over. If you want to come and get it." So I was a little annoyed. So I stepped down kind of hard. And all of a sudden, I felt this huge pain. I jump and scream.
So Uncle Rusty thought you were exaggerating?
Yeah, I don't know.
Being so
Everybody,
dramatic.
"What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I don't know. I stepped on something." And so then I don't know who looked at it first, but I had to lay over and I'm screaming. Every time anybody touched it, I screamed. And they looked, I think my mother finally looked, and there was just one teeny small drop of blood there. My mother touched the blood and I screamed. My father was sleeping because he had to go to work. So they woke my father up and he comes in, he goes, and he looked at it, he goes, "There's nothing there." And he would touch it. And I screamed and he goes, Something's there," because he wouldn't be reacting in this much pain if it wasn't something. So I don't know. He was just starting to do the work upstairs
Mm.
to lay out the new bedrooms and stuff. So he had a magnetic stud finder, would find the nail. You go, point at it. "Here's a nail. So this is where the studs are." So he went and got that. And he put it on my foot and it went bing. He goes, "Well, whatever it is, it's made of metal." So they took me to the emergency room. My father dropped me and my mother off there.
Because grandma didn't drive.
My mother didn't drive, and then my father had to go to eventually had to go to work, but, he's showing the doctor, "Look, look, it's metal," and he showed him with he brought his stud finder and everything, so because he couldn't see anything, and they looking at it, and they didn't know, so they took an X-ray of it, and, they found there was a sewing needle totally in my foot, lodged in the bones of my ankle. The ankle and the bone and the foot bones, all it went in there.
It was like a 2 inch or something,
Or
or
yeah, it was like a 2-inch,
or inch and a half maybe. How big are those
needle,
things then? Yeah.
and, so and what they did was they took X-rays, they put other markers on there so they could point out because it didn't give any depth of where they just showed, it's in there. So they took a different angle so they could figure out exactly where it is. And then they cut my foot open. They did it under local anesthesia. And I'm sitting there and they would chase my mother out of the room. And then they would come in there. And I remember looking back over my shoulder and see them working on my foot. And I remember seeing them take a towel that was totally full of blood away. And I go, "Oh my goodness." And I could feel them, like if
Right,
somebody's rubbed your fingernail against your foot, that's what it
right.
felt like.
Because it takes away the pain, but you still have
Yeah,
to
they
see.
took it. So the first time they didn't get nothing. So they went back and they taped up more things and they took more x-rays. And then they cut me open again. And the doctor went in there and he grabbed it, boom, and he pulled it out. And he broke it when he pulled it out because half of it was stuck in the bones. He goes, "Oh, I got it." Boom. And he goes, "Oh, I only got half." So they were going to admit me overnight. And this is Thanksgiving. So all these people are coming in with burns because everybody's burning their cells cooking turkey or something. And so they're going to admit me overnight. And then all of a sudden, this doctor comes in. The shift was changing. He goes, let me give it a try." So they x-rayed me again. They put me down again. They chased my mother out again. and they open it. I'm sweating the whole time. It's like craziness. And boom, he gets it out. And they got it all out. They sewed me all up. And then my mother had I don't know, we might have taken a taxi home. Can't imagine us taking a bus because we would have, unless there was a bus right outside the hospital and then we took a cab from there. But I remember getting out of a car and walking into the house. I think I had crutches or something because I couldn't step down on my foot. And
Who was in the house with all the kids?
yeah, I guess my grandmother was over there watching everybody, and they're all waiting. And now my mother, the Thanksgiving dinner was put all up, and I don't know what happened. Anyway, it was like about 6. So I was away for like 8 hours, 3 operation type, cuttings. Anyway, 3 attempts to take this before they got the whole thing out. And I walk in the door. And there I come in there, and the first thing my brothers and sisters say to me is, "Thanks a lot, Bob. You ruined Thanksgiving." Sorry, guys. I'm remembered as ruining that Thanksgiving that year, but it was always something like that going on.
Yeah. Well, when did, Aunt Mo had to go to the hospital once too, right?
Oh, yeah, I sent my sisters to the hospital, and I didn't tell her until about 10 years ago that it was me that sent her to the hospital.
So, like, 40 years later.
Yeah, 40 years later or something like that, and she was extremely angry at me. I said, "Come on, it was 40 years ago.
She
You would
still
have got
has
over
me.
you would have got over it by now. It's your fault," she said. "Oh my goodness." But I mean, it was like we were living that in the first floor, and when you come in the door, hall there's like a whole closet for winter clothes and stuff, and it was full of boots and coats, and they're all over the floor,
Scarf
and
and all kinds of stuff.
winter pants and stuff. And then the bathrooms over there, the bedrooms and the kitchens are over there. So I hid amongst all these clothes and everything, and I figured whoever walks by, I'll stick my foot out and trip them. It'll be funny.
It's a great gag.
But
Sounds like a great gag.
it would be funny. Little did I know, the first person out is my sister Maureen, Mo, we call her. She comes running out at full speed, which I have to say, it was kind of her fault. Shouldn't have been running in the house. If she had been walking, she would have tripped, she would have fell, she would have fought me or whatever. But instead, she was running, and I didn't think, oh, she's running. Maybe I should let her go by and get the person. Well, I stuck my foot out. She went flying and hit her knee into something and cut it open, and she's bleeding at the knee. And my mother had to call an ambulance, and they came and take her away. And I remember sitting in the front porch looking at her going out to the hospital, thinking, my goodness, what did I do? And I never owned up to it. So I never owned up to it, never told her, yeah, that was me. But maybe 10 years or so ago, yeah, it was after I retired. So within the last 10 years, I
So
told my,
how old were you when you did this?
what?
How old were you when you did this about?
I had to be under 12 because we still hadn't moved upstairs yet. So in 62, we moved upstairs. So we were still living downstairs. So I was under 12. I was 11, possibly 10.
And she's like 3 years younger than you?
Yeah, no, she's 2 years younger than me. That's the other thing, when you look at it, my two older brother and sisters were born, and then my mother took almost a year off, and then my brother Billy was born. So there was just under 2 years between Billy and Kathy. Then there's only 15 months between me and Billy, 13 months between me and Eileen. And then between Eileen and Maureen, there was only 14 months. And then Maureen and Jimmy, there was like 16, maybe, like 16 months or 18 months. So in a 5-year period, my mother had like 5 kids or something like that.
Yeah, I remember the church we were going to, and they were trying to talk about your childhood and what was happening in your childhood that we can kind of work through to bring about more stability and health and stuff like that. And you said something like, "Well, that's easy. My mother was either pregnant or in the hospital, and my father was either working or sleeping."
Yeah.
It's my childhood.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. My mother seemed always to be pregnant, whatever. when my mother would go to hospital to have a baby, she'd be there for a week. And like I said, we're watching this show called The Midwives. They would go into the people's houses. They would help the lady give birth, and then the lady'd be up doing her chores or something like that.
I think maybe grandma just kept getting pregnant so she could have a week off.
That's what I came to the conclusion she had a week off when she went into the hospital. They kept her in there for a week.
That sounds like a nice break.
Yeah, it was a break, like a week in the hospital. She could just hold the new baby, So, but I remember I was like mothers in having a baby, and I think it was probably Richard because it was in the summer, and we had all these tricycles, so we had the whole neighborhood, and we all had these tricycles, and we're going to go around the block, and I thought it was a big hill we used to go sleigh riding on and everything. Went back there as this little tiny bump, not a bump, it's a little bit of a hill, but we went riding down all on tricycles. We were going to go around the block, and one kid was like, he didn't have a tricycle, but we had an extra one, but the front wheel had no rubber on it, so it was just the rim. So he was riding that, and he was behind me. So we're riding down this hill, and you had to make the turn around this corner, and I tried to make the turn. I was going too fast, and the bike fell, and I flipped over onto the ground. The kid with the bicycle with no rubber on his wheel ran me over, right over my chest. I don't know if I have a bone out of place in my chest. I don't know if it was from that, but my chest was bleeding and everything. And I remember going home, and the only one home was my father. And so my mother was in the hospital having a baby, and I wanted my mother, and he put me in my bed and laid me down there and put a washcloth on my chest. And that was all I got.
Not a lot of
for that.
nurturing from dad.
Yeah, put this wet cloth on your chest and just lie there still for a while. All I remember thinking is, I want my mommy. But again, she was on her vacation.
Such a piece of cake to have kids. Child labor is not.
And we went to a Catholic school, and they had uniforms. And the year that I started, they changed the uniform from blue to green. You had blue, light blue shirt, blue tie, blue pants. And the blue tie had an emblem on it. St. Fidelis School, which we used to say sisters' feet stink. But we would go to this school in our uniforms, and the thing came out, everybody had to have a new uniform except those who couldn't afford it. So I went to school with hand-me-downs of my older brothers in blue for 2, maybe 3 years. I don't remember, until I got to my brother hand-me-down of the green uniforms. So I wore blue uniforms. And like I say, in the school, it was baby booming. They didn't turn anybody away. There's way too many kids in the class. Looks like there was way too many kids in my mother's house. Go to school, there's one nun or one lay teacher with over 50, sometimes 60, up to 70 kids in the class. The only way you can teach in a classroom with 60 kids is with a heavy hand. You ain't gonna, if you didn't have a heavy hand, the kids will eat you alive. So it was like we were getting tortured. I think the nuns didn't mind doing that anyway. They used to like to pull your hair and hit your knuckles and hang you on the blackboard and put you in the garbage can and tell the garbage man's going to come and take you away. All kinds of good stuff like that. And it was funny how the garbage man that came, they threw this one kid in the garbage can and were saying something. He said, "That's it." He threw him in the garbage, and the garbage man's going to come and take you away, the nun said, and throw you in the garbage. So, and now we were going to have our prayer. So this kid starts crying, screaming. So the nun takes a piece of loose leaf paper, crumbles it up, and stuffs it in his face. And he says, "Now we can continue our prayers." This kid's in the garbage can with a loose leaf paper in his mouth, and we're saying prayers. And so, and then the garbage man that came was our janitor, and all of us kids knew the janitor, and his name was Casper, which was a great name for them because the TV show Casper the Friendly Ghost was on. So we used to call him Casper the Friendly Ghost. And when he came in to take the kid away, we was, oh, that's not the garbage man, that's Casper.
And he didn't take him away, did he?
No, he didn't take him away, but he had the kid promise not to disturb the rest of the class, which, lasted for a little while.
Right.
But yeah, they would, come and take your pencils away, they smack you for talking, throw erasers at you. One time it was great. This one girl jumped out of her desk and started running up the aisle to go out the classroom. She was going to run to the bathroom, I guess. But anyway, the nun stopped right in front of the aisle that this girl was running up. And she says, "Where do you think you're going?" And the girl went, "Whoa," and threw up on the nun. And we thought that was the greatest thing that could have happened, that the nun stood there. "Where do you think you're going?" Blah. Now, the nun went back to her class. She came back after cleaning up and changing her clothes. And then she said, "If anybody's sick, don't raise your hand. Just run out of the class. I won't stop you." Oh, thank you.
She learned a lesson.
Yeah, she learned her lesson. But yeah, it was like crazy stuff going on. And, they always wound up putting me in the last seat in the end row back with all the loser kids, and the kids that were learning, they got the front seats because you went by grades. If you had good grades, you sat in the front. You had bad grades, you sat in the back, which it should have been the opposite, really, because, the kids that had the good grades didn't need to sit in the front. And then we were in the back. We didn't pay any attention because the teacher,
Can barely even hear
she
them.
said she had eyes in the back of her head, but we knew she really didn't. But
But those kinds of things, it's amazing how your perspective changes over years,
what's what?
like when you're a kid and you see and think about these different things, then you become a parent or you start doing
Yeah.
something like the Boy Scouts and having to organize these children and make them do something they don't want to do or whatnot.
Yeah, it's always kids, they're crazy. Yeah, there was always some kind of torture going on in school, nuns,
Yeah,
and
it probably was mutual.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't until I got into this, I had to do the seventh grade over. The second time I was doing the seventh grade, suddenly the they had building project the whole time I was going to school. Even before I started going to school, they had this building project. And they were, had a thermometer with how much money we need for the building project. They would have bazaars and all these things to raise money. But by the time I was in the seventh grade, they opened up the new part of the building. And finally, in the seventh and eighth grade, there was only 30 kids in my class or less.
Oh, fun. Yeah, they had the facility then.
Yeah, now it's like they had enough classrooms to divide the kids.
Right.
But it was but now by now I'm like 12, 13 years
All
old,
the all the damage has been done
Yeah.
because you've already been traumatized
I'm already, been called retarded, put in the dumb row, and
and not been taught how to read.
yeah, I had to go to extra classes to learn how to read, Catholic high school.
And then it became just the normal kind of bad stories you hear about growing up and going to Catholic school, not the extra with the
Yeah, by
secular
that time
kids.
I was like, I could handle Catholic school, but I remember like when you become an eighth grader, they had what they call parole boys, and you would wear this slash and you would help the lady crossing the street, or the nuns would say, "We need a parole boy to," so you'd get out of class to go help patrol. Yeah, like, what did I say?
Like a parole
Parole.
officer.
That's my dyslexia. Parole.
Patrol
Patrol. We had a patrol
with a
with the slash and the
slash
badge, and
stash.
we uh, we all got fired. But I can't remember what happened. But she fired us all except for one kid that used to open and close the door for the mother superior. She liked him, so you're all fired except you. Like, so now they made the seventh graders the patrol boys, and so they would be the ones that would give law and order, but they never had any power over the eighth graders. They didn't want to, they would say something to the eighth graders, and at the school they would get beat up. So it wasn't the best way to work things out and make the 7th grade is the,
In charge of the kids that were older than
yeah, in charge of the kids. So,
but Grammy wanted to hear about your report cards? Oh,
oh,
how do they renounce it?
the report cards, that was an interesting thing. Back in the day, you get the report card, everything it wasn't like it is today. We didn't get letters, we got numbers, and we got from 0 to 100. After I got to like the 5th grade or something like that, they would no longer give you anything below a 60. They would just give it at minus 60. You got below a 60. But when I was going, I got zeros. And I could do math, and they always gave you a passing grade in religion for some reason, or usually they give you like at least a 65 or something like that, something to pass. They wouldn't fail you usually for a religion, especially if you knew the act of contrition and all that other stuff. You could do you could repeat the prayers and stuff. So they would every once in a while, they would have these things like the priest would come into the classroom and give out the report cards. Sometimes they used to come in and just call out your name and hand you the report card. Call out your name, here's your report card. Very good, very bad, whatever. But this time the priest came in and he decided to read everybody's grades. And so he's handed the report card. Maybe he has 50 report cards. He opens them up and he goes, he'd say, Jimmy Valari, who is a friend of mine, and he didn't get very good there. He goes, religion, 85, spelling, 60, reading, 50, math, 45, whatever. And he read all the things, and he passed a couple of things, but most of them he was below 60 on them. And she'd come and he'd go, come on, Jimmy, you got to do a little better. There you go. Here's your card. And then you'd have normal kids that would get like 85 for this and 75 and 65 and everything passing, but, no outstanding. Here's your report card. And then he called out this girl, Susan. I don't want to give up her real name or whatever. Wait, she had very good grades, the best grades in the class, and calls out her grades. He goes, spelling 100, religion 100, English 100, history 100, math 100, reading 99. He goes, ooh, Susan, you're slipping. Got to improve that reading. Handed her a card. I remember him saying that.
He
It's like,
couldn't even say one nice thing about
yeah, he goes, oh, yeah, you gotta do a little improvement about that,
That's
Susan.
right.
You missed 100 on that one. And I'm thinking, oh my God, please don't read out I'm praying. You should watch out what you pray for. God, please don't let him read my numbers. So he goes, but that was the worst thing that could have happened. So he goes, Robert Rogers. He'll set my report card, and I'm coming up, and he looks at me and he goes, here you go, Robert. He clears his throat and gives me my card. And I go sit down. And everybody in the class wanted to know what I got. What'd you get? What's your grades? He didn't say anything. And I'm looking at my grades, and I had, reading 0, spelling 0, English 0. I had math. I think I had like an 85, even or something like that in the younger grades. I don't know what year this was, so I might not have had an 85 in math because once they started, because this might have been around the time that they introduced English into math. You're sitting on a train going 55 miles an hour, heading towards New York, while somebody else is on a train going to Chicago, going 65 miles an hour. How fast are you two going? That one would
right.
just
It's a
have to
word
head up to
problem.
2 speeds. But I didn't, I'm thinking I couldn't figure out.
The words.
So I would just take the 2 numbers and do something with them and come out with an answer, whether it was right or wrong. I didn't know. It was like mathematically, I did it correct, but it might not have been the correct answer.
Because you didn't know what the problem was
Yeah,
you're
because I
trying to
didn't really
solve.
know if it was if I was multiplying or whatever. So anyway, so I might have had a bad mark in math too. And before that, a couple of years before that, I was in the 2nd grade, and me and a kid, we decided he was lousy in math and I was lousy in English, so he was going to let me copy off of him in English, and I would let him copy off me in math. I got one question wrong, and he on the question and did the wrong everything. Whatever he did, he copied everything word for word that I did. He had the exact same mistake, same way and everything. So and the teacher looked at it and we got the same grades. And she says, all right, you two. So I got in trouble for copying off of him in math. I said, wait, no, he copied off of me, you know. We know you're the dumb kid, so obviously you copied off of him. So I got in trouble for copying off of him for math, and I never got to copy his English. But anyway, that was like crazy that they would just read your numbers up there. And then after that, by the time I got older, they stopped giving out. They started giving minus 50, minus 60. And then after that, they gave grades A plus, A minus, B
Right.
plus, B,
Mm,
and then you get an F for failure. So you didn't get anything worse than an F.
mhm.
You know, like I say, when I was in the early grades, I got, you know, if you look at my report, if you go back and get my permanent record, pull out my report card, you'll see I had quite a few zeros through the years in my education, you know. And like I say, by the time I got to the fourth grade, they gave up on me. And in the fifth grade, they put me in the dumb row. The only reason my mother found out is because my brother got left back into my class.
So,
So,
but I had another story. One more question for today. I think it's getting close to the end.
yeah.
I remember you talking about the horseshoe crabs.
Oh, that was a very long time ago. And I think we saw the movie, there was a movie out, The Attack of the Giant Crabs. So these
Mm.
crabs attacked and started eating people, chopping their heads off and everything. It was like, you know, when you're about 8 years old, it's kind of scary, 8, 9 years old. So one day we were out by the water because we live in College Point. You go to the one water, you can see right area, you can see Rikers Island, you can see the bridges, you can see Manhattan, or you could go over in this one little bay area, you could see LaGuardia
Really?
is where my father worked at the airport.
And what water was that?
I don't know. It was part of the East River, but it might be a bay. I would have to look at it. There might be it might have a bay name. I don't know, to tell you the
Okay, but
truth.
it was connected to the East River.
But it was connected to the East River. So
Mhm,
because Rikers Island was in the East River.
mhm.
My brother and two of his friends went out there and got chased.
So they swam to it?
No, they were in a boat and they got too close. They got, you know, get out of here in a restricted area. They were like 10 years old or something like that.
A little raft.
No, it was a boat with a little motor or maybe it might have had rows, so, you know, but so they got in trouble for that. But anyway, we're there, and, like I say, we could see the planes coming and whatever, and all of a sudden, we look over the area that was like, we were up on this area that was like, a cement with railing, and then down below was all the rock and the water coming up, and there was hundreds, if not thousands, of horseshoe crabs, and I never saw a horseshoe crab in my life. And it was like we're like, look, we're being attacked! Oh my God! They're an endangered
Right.
species now, but they would come to. Because there's a couple places on Long Island where they would um,
Breeding
eat. Yeah,
grounds.
the breeding grounds. And this was one of them because, like I said, we knew nothing of that, and I
What
don't even know if they were endangered at that time yet or what was the deal. But anyway, we had no idea. We thought we were being attacked by the giant crabs, and they were like really strange looking to me.
they are ugly looking.
Yeah, you never seen anything like it. We had no idea what the hell is that. You know? Yeah, that was crazy.
Right. So thanks so much, Granddad, for your
Okay.
time. It's good hearing some stories and
Yeah, one
uh,
day we might even get to me being in the Navy. The only man? No, I probably not. But 3 years in the Navy, and I only stepped onto a ship to look at. This is a ship. This is where people sleep. This is where This is where. Okay, and they got off.
that was the only time you went on the ship
That was
the
the
whole
only time
time
I was on a ship
in the Navy for 3
in
years.
the Navy for 3 years, and I think it was the Lexington down in Pensacola.
So stay tuned for next time.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Granddad.
Okay.